The night was heavy with Florida's summer heat, thick enough to feel like breathing through wet cloth. The apartment complex on Bay Street stood silent, its cracked parking lot glistening under the weak glow of street lamps. Then the sirens came. Red and blue lights splashed against faded stucco walls as two patrol cars slid to a stop. Neighbors gathered in hesitant clusters, some in bathrobes, others clutching half-finished beers, the hum of ceiling fans behind them, cut by the rising wail of police radios. Inside apartment 3B, a girl lay still on the carpet. 17-year-old Mia Turner. Her phone was only a foot away, the screen black, the case cracked. The neighbors who peered through the door would later whisper about it. The phone, the teacher, the way she'd been lying there as if frozen in the middle of a sentence. Detective Sarah Lopez arrived minutes later, her shoes sticking slightly to the linoleum as she crossed the threshold. She paused, scanning the scene. The room smelled faintly of air freshener, but beneath it, the metallic tang of blood cut through. "Who called it in?" she asked, voice low but carrying weight. A uniformed officer pointed toward the couch, where a man sat hunched, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tightly they were almost trembling. "Name's Cole Daniels," the officer said. "Teaches over at West Creek High." Lopez studied him. Early 30s, pressed shirt, sleeves rolled up. His wedding ring caught the light as he rubbed his forehead with the heel of his hand. She wasn't supposed to be here," he muttered, not looking at anyone. Lopez crouched slightly, meeting his eyes. "She a student of yours?" He nodded once. Outside, the murmurs spread like wildfire. "Teacher killed her." "Some kind of fight." No, I heard she overdosed. No one knew the truth, but the sight of Daniels in cuffs minutes later would be enough to set the story ablaze by morning. The evidence team moved silently, cameras flashing. Each shot froze fragments of the night. Mia's pale wrist against the carpet, the overturned lamp, the empty glass on the counter. Lopez walked through the apartment slowly, noting details. 2 coffee mugs in the sink, one still warm. A notebook on the table with hurried handwriting. A set of keys abandoned near the door. She turned to her partner, Detective Mark Reeves. "Doesn't look like a break-in." "No," Reeves said, flipping through the notebook carefully. "Looks like she knew him, came here on her own." Daniels, now seated in the back of the patrol car, pressed his forehead to the window. His lips moved soundlessly, as though rehearsing an explanation no one had asked for yet. By 1 a.m., the medical examiner arrived. Mia's body was lifted gently, zipped into black canvas, and carried past the watching neighbors. A woman in curlers crossed herself. Someone else muttered, 17, my God. Reporters had already gathered at the edge of the tape, cameras hungry for tragedy. "Any statement?" one shouted toward Lopez. "Not tonight," she said, her voice flat. Back inside, Reeves glanced at the apartment one last time. "What's your gut say?" Lopez slipped on her gloves, picking up the phone near Mia's body. The screen lit up, a text notification glowing briefly before it locked again. "My gut says," she murmured, "this wasn't random, and whatever's on this phone might tell us why." She slid it into an evidence bag. As the crime scene cleared, the apartment fell silent except for the low buzz of the refrigerator. The story, for now, was only pieces. A teacher, a student, a phone full of secrets. Outside, Cole Daniels was driven away toward the station, the red lights fading into the night. The neighbors drifted back to their apartments, doors closing one by one until Bay Street was quiet again, except for the whispers, already rewriting what had happened behind those thin walls. But by morning, West Creek High would know, and the story of Mr. Daniels, the beloved teacher, was only beginning. By sunrise, West Creek High buzzed with rumors. Teenagers huddled in doorways, scrolling through text threads that exploded overnight. Mr. Daniels? No way. They found her in his apartment. Was it murder? The school's hallways filled with the smell of coffee, perfume, and panic. But before he became the center of a storm, Cole Daniels had been the teacher everyone loved. 2 weeks earlier, in room 214, sunlight poured through the wide windows, catching flecks of chalk dust in the air. Mr. Daniels stood at the front of his classroom, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up just enough to look approachable rather than strict. "All right, people," he said, tapping the board with his marker. "Shakespeare isn't homework. It's drama, passion, betrayal. Basically everything you already post on Instagram. You just need to read it out loud." Laughter rippled across the room. Students liked him because he treated them like co-conspirators rather than children. He joked about bad cafeteria food, told them stories about getting lost on road trips, and encouraged shy voices to read the loudest lines in Macbeth. Even Principal Harris admitted, more than once, that Daniels brought the English department back to life. At home, though, Cole Daniels lived in a silence thick enough to choke on. His marriage to Lisa had thinned to polite nods over breakfast and empty goodnights. She worked long hours at the hospital. He stayed late grading essays. Their conversations were mostly reminders about bills or errands, words falling into the same void where laughter used to be. Sometimes, while washing dishes at midnight, he wondered when exactly his life had shifted from promising to quietly disappointing. Back at school, students never saw that side of him. To them, he was easygoing Mr. Daniels, the teacher who quoted poetry like it was advice for surviving teenage heartbreak. Love, he told a group of seniors once, leaning against his desk, is rarely convenient, but it's always honest. That's why it hurts. Mia Turner had been there that day, sitting in the second row, notebook open, but pen unmoving. She'd watched him with an expression hard to read, half curiosity, half something else. She's been staying after class a lot, another teacher mentioned in the faculty lounge one afternoon, stirring powdered creamer into coffee. Daniels shrugged. College essays, she wants them perfect. It wasn't a lie, at first. By the following week, Mia's name and his started appearing in the same whispered sentences. Nothing direct, just half suspicions wrapped in teenage gossip. Bet she's got a crush on him. Or maybe he's helping her with something big. Daniels ignored it. Students talked about everything. Besides, he told himself, he was careful, professional, but even professionals have blind spots. On the morning after the tragedy, Principal Harris stared at the news article on his phone, disbelief carving lines into his face. Local teacher questioned after student found dead. The photo showed Daniels at a school fundraiser last spring, laughing with students around a bake sale table. He was one of our best, Harris muttered. The secretary shifted uncomfortably. Police want access to his classroom today. Harris nodded, rubbing his temples. Give them whatever they need. By noon, detectives stood in room 214, scanning the posters on the walls, the stack of essays on his desk, the calendar marked with after-school tutoring sessions. One name appeared more than any other. Mia Turner. Detective Lopez circled it slowly with her pen, the ink bleeding through the paper. Next, the story would no longer be about the teacher everyone admired. It would be about the girl who knew his secrets. Mia Turner's world, at first glance, looked like any other high school senior's. College brochures littered her bedroom desk. A half-packed duffel bag leaned against the wall, waiting for weekend soccer practice. The mirror above her dresser was crowded with sticky notes, reminders to apply for scholarships, deadlines for essays, motivational quotes scribbled in bright ink. But beneath the ordinary lay the secret that would one day drag her name into headlines. Her phone was the first clue. Buried in its camera roll were videos, short, shaky, stolen fragments of afternoons when the line between student and teacher blurred. She never showed them to friends, never even hinted they existed, but sometimes, late at night, she scrolled through them alone, thumb hovering over the play button as though watching might confirm whether what she felt was real. Because what Mia Turner carried wasn't just evidence, it was confusion wrapped in adrenaline, a forbidden connection she couldn't name without choking on the word. 2 weeks before her death, she confided in her best friend Leah, though not the whole truth. I think I'm falling for someone, Mia said, as they sat in the bleachers after practice, cleats tapping against metal. Leah smirked. Name? Mia hesitated too long. No one you know, she said quickly, eyes fixed on the field. Leah raised a brow. Secret boyfriend. Sounds complicated. Mia only shrugged. Complicated didn't begin to cover it. At home, her parents assumed the extra tutoring sessions were for college prep. Her father bragged about her grades at work. Her mother kept a folder of acceptance letters like treasures. They didn't see the way Mia stared at her phone whenever it buzzed, or how her smile faltered after certain messages. One evening, she sat cross-legged on her bed, scrolling through texts from Daniels. Mr. D. No one can know about this. Mia. I know, I need to see you again. Mr. D, careful. People talk. She read the thread 3 times before locking her phone, heart hammering, because lately she wasn't sure what scared her more, people finding out, or him deciding to disappear first. The turning point came when Mia recorded their last meeting. It wasn't planned. The phone stayed on the edge of his coffee table, camera angled slightly off, catching only voices and fragments of movement. "You said you cared about me," she whispered in the recording. "I do," his voice replied, tight, defensive. "But you can't keep showing up like this." Her own voice shook. "So that's it? You get to walk away and I just pretend nothing happened?" A pause. Then his low, strained answer. "Mia, you don't understand what you're risking." She kept the video, not because she planned to use it, at least not then, but because it felt like proof she hadn't imagined the whole thing. Yet somewhere between fear and anger, the idea began to take shape. What if she did use it? What if the power shifted, even for a moment? At school, she smiled through classes, turned in essays, laughed with friends. But Leah noticed the shadows under her eyes, the way she checked her phone like waiting for bad news. "You okay?" Leah asked one day. Mia nodded. Lied. Just tired. By the time detectives would one day scroll through her camera roll, the videos would tell more truth than Mia ever got to speak aloud. And soon, she would decide to confront Cole Daniels one last time. It started with tutoring. At least, that's what Mia told herself the first time she stayed after class. The classroom felt different without the noise of students shoving books into backpacks, the clatter of lockers in the hall. The late afternoon sunlight stretched long shadows across the desks as Mr. Daniels sat at the front, grading essays with a red pen clicking in his hand. "Need help with the scholarship letter?" he asked without looking up. She nodded, sliding into the chair beside his desk. "Yeah, I just don't know what to say to make it stand out," he smiled faintly. "Tell them who you are, Mia, not who you think they want." It should have ended there, teacher giving advice, student listening, but boundaries erode slowly, almost invisibly, until one day they're gone. The second week, she stayed longer. He read over her essay draft, leaning closer than before. Their arms touched once, neither moved. The third week, she laughed at one of his dry jokes about the school cafeteria, and he looked at her too long before glancing back at the papers on his desk. One evening, rain lashed against the windows as they worked. Power flickered once, briefly dimming the room. Mia jumped and he chuckled softly. "Scared of a little thunder?" he teased. She rolled her eyes but smiled. "Just wasn't expecting it." Silence followed, the kind that hums with things unsaid. Finally, he spoke again, quieter this time. "You remind me of myself at your age, always wanting out of small places." "Maybe I do," she said. After that, conversations shifted. They talked about music, books, places they wanted to see. He told her about college regrets, a novel he once tried to write, the job offers he turned down to stay close to home. "Sometimes," he said one evening, staring at the rain streaking the glass, "I wonder if I made the wrong choices." Mia studied him carefully. "Like what?" "Like staying where everything feels safe but small." She didn't answer, but later she would write the line in her journal, "Safe but small." The first time she recorded him wasn't deliberate. She left her phone on the desk during one of those late sessions, camera facing downward, microphone capturing everything, the low rumble of his voice, the way hers softened when she spoke to him. Listening back later, she realized the conversation sounded nothing like teacher and student. It sounded like two people crossing a line they couldn't uncross. One Friday evening, when the halls were empty and the janitor's cart squeaked faintly in the distance, he handed back her revised essay. "You've got talent," he said. "Don't waste it." She looked at him steadily. "I won't." Neither moved for a long moment. Then he reached out, almost as if by accident, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Mia's breath caught. He pulled his hand back quickly, as though realizing the weight of what had just happened. "We should," he started, but stopped. "Yeah," she said softly. "We should." But neither left the room. Over the next 2 weeks, meetings moved from classroom to coffee shops, then once to his apartment under the excuse of reviewing essays away from school distractions. There, the line vanished completely. Afterward, he paced the room while she sat on the edge of his couch, scrolling nervously through her phone. "This can't happen again," he muttered. "Why?" she asked too sharply. "Because people talk. Because I could lose everything. She looked at him then, eyes steady. Then maybe don't give them a reason to. By the time she left that night, another video sat hidden in her camera roll. Not planned, not shared, just kept. Because deep down, Mia already knew something he didn't. Secrets like theirs never stayed buried. And sooner or later, she would decide what to do with them. Next would come the night when those secrets stopped being whispers and turned into threats. The first message came on a Sunday evening. Cole Daniels sat alone at his kitchen table, dinner untouched, the glow of his phone screen casting pale light across his tired face. "Mia, we need to talk. In person," he typed back quickly. "About what?" Her reply took 3 minutes. "The videos. I'm serious, Mr. D. Meet me tomorrow after school. Videos. Plural." Cole set the phone down slowly, staring at the condensation sliding down his untouched glass of water. His chest felt hollow, as though the floor beneath his life had tilted without warning. At West Creek High the next day, students whispered in their usual clusters, the sound of lockers slamming echoing through the halls. But to Cole, everything felt sharper, louder. Every laugh like a warning bell, every glance a possible accusation. He taught his classes mechanically, voice flat, eyes drifting toward the clock every few minutes. When the final bell rang, Mia was waiting. She leaned against the lockers, arms crossed, phone in hand. Her face gave nothing away. "Mr. D," she said softly, "we need somewhere private." They ended up in his classroom. Afternoon light slanted through the blinds, striping the floor in gold and shadow. She didn't sit. "I have the videos," she said, voice steady. "All of them. And the messages." Cole forced himself to meet her gaze. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want something." Her tone wasn't angry. It wasn't even loud. That made it worse. He swallowed hard. "Mia, do you understand what you're saying? If anyone sees those, my career, my marriage, everything's gone." She tilted her head slightly, as if considering sympathy, then dismissed it. "You should have thought about that before." There was a long silence. Outside, a janitor pushed a broom across the hallway, the faint scrape of bristles carrying through the door. Finally, Cole said, "What do you want?" Mia's fingers tightened around her phone. "I want you to leave her, your wife. You told me you cared about me. Prove it." The words hit like cold water. "Mia," he said carefully, whatever you think this is, it can't work. You're 17. And what?" she snapped, eyes flashing. "That didn't matter when it was convenient for you." He flinched. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I'm not asking. If you don't do it, the school board gets everything. Your wife too." Cole stared at her, pulse hammering. This was no longer a mistake to hide. It was a noose tightening around his life. "Mia, listen," he began, trying to steady his voice. "I care about you, I do, but you don't understand what you're risking. For both of us." She laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Oh, I understand perfectly. I have the proof. That means I have control, for once." Her phone lit up in her hand, screen reflecting in her eyes. "Maybe I should just send one now," she murmured, thumb hovering over the screen. "Don't," he said quickly, stepping forward. She looked up at him, expression unreadable. "Then you know what you have to do." For the next week, his life unraveled one thread at a time. He lied to his wife about late meetings, avoided colleagues in the teacher's lounge, lost his temper over small things in class. Students noticed, whispers grew. And Mia? She acted normal, smiled in the hallways, turned in her essays. No one suspected the storm quietly building between them. One night, Cole sat in his car outside his own house, engine off, lights dark, watching the glow of the living room where his wife, Reed on the couch. He thought about the life inside those walls, the marriage already, cracking before Mia ever existed, in it. He thought about the texts on Mia's phone, the videos sitting like explosives waiting for a match, and for the first time, he felt something shift inside him. Not panic, not guilt, something colder. The next day, Mia sent another message. "Meet me tonight, your apartment. We're figuring this out. Or I start sending things." He stared at the words for a long time before replying. "Fine. Tonight." By the time evening came, he had convinced himself it would just be a conversation, that he could talk her down, make her see reason. But deep down, another thought had begun to take root, a darker one, because There were only two ways out now, and talking felt less certain by the hour. Next would come the night everything snapped. The night on Bay Street. The evening was sticky, the air thick with humidity that clung to Cole Daniels' shirt as he unlocked his apartment door. Rain had started again, drumming lightly on the balcony, the sound masking the soft click of the deadbolt. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of coffee and paper, the faint tang of fear not yet present but hovering, waiting. Mia Turner was already there, leaning against the kitchen counter, phone clutched tightly in her hand. Her eyes, wide and focused, followed his every move. "You're late," she said calmly, voice steady despite the tension in the room. Cole's throat felt dry. "Traffic," he muttered, setting his bag down and forcing himself to meet her gaze. She didn't budge. "I have the videos," she said, tilting her phone toward him. "All of them. Every conversation, every meeting. You can't talk your way out of this anymore." He swallowed. He had rehearsed responses all week, but now the words failed him. "Mia, this isn't necessary. We can figure something out." Her eyes flicked sharply. "Figure what out? That I destroy you? That your career, your marriage, your reputation are gone because of your mistakes?" He tried to step closer, his voice lower. "I care about you. I really do. But this," she cut him off. "Care about me? Care about me enough to risk me like this? You're lucky I don't send them now." For a long moment, only the rain and the hum of the refrigerator filled the apartment. Then Mia moved, her hand hovering over the screen of her phone like a trigger. Cole's pulse surged. "Mia, don't. We can talk, please." "Talk?" Her voice trembled slightly now, but only in the edges. "Talk hasn't worked. You lied, you manipulated. And now you think I'm the problem?" Something inside him snapped. He lunged toward the counter, reaching for the phone. She pulled back instinctively, phone held high, and the tip of it grazed his hand. The screen cracked against the edge of the counter, a bright spiderweb of damage. "No," he hissed, voice tight, strained. Mia's chest heaved, eyes darting around the apartment. She backed toward the living room, and he followed, a dangerous mix of desperation and panic guiding his movements. "Stop," she pleaded. "Just don't touch me. I said stop," he shouted, the sound louder than he intended, echoing against the walls. They froze, staring at each other. The small living room seemed to shrink, the shadows elongating as lightning flashed outside, illuminating the fear in her eyes and the raw panic in his. And then it happened. One wrong step, one flinch too many, a push, a stumble, and she fell backward against the edge of the coffee table. Cole reached for her, but his hands hit her instead of steadying her. Her head struck the corner. Hard. Silence. He froze, chest heaving, staring at the motionless figure on the floor. Blood began to seep, a dark, spreading stain that seemed impossibly fast, impossibly final. "Mia! Mia!" His voice cracked, desperation mingling with horror. He sank to his knees beside her, hands shaking as he touched her shoulder, checking for breath he knew would not come. Her eyes were closed, her phone lay shattered, the screen black. The room smelled of rain, blood, and panic. Cole's mind raced, logic and terror clashing. If anyone found out, he thought frantically, he'd lose everything. Life, career, freedom. He looked around the apartment, considering his options, the enormity of what had just occurred pressing down like a weight he couldn't lift. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. He pulled a sheet from the couch and tried to cover her body, like wrapping it in denial, as he paced, thinking of excuses, alibis, stories that might keep the outside world from seeing what had just happened. A phone rang in the next apartment. Cole froze, heart pounding. The neighbors didn't need to see this, didn't need to hear the truth. He realized he had to act. The first lie slipped out before his mind fully formed it. He would call a friend, stage the scene, make it look like she had left alive, anything to delay the inevitable discovery of what he had done. Cole Daniels sat back, chest heaving, staring at the lifeless body on the carpet. The hum of the refrigerator and the distant drum of rain were the only sounds left. By now, he knew the world outside Bay Street would never see him the same way again. And deep down, he also knew that this night, this single, irreversible night, was only the beginning. Cole Daniels moved mechanically, his hands trembling as he pulled the sheet tighter around Mia's body. Each fold felt like a confession, a seal on the night he wished could be erased. The apartment smelled of rain, blood, and desperation, an aroma he would carry forever. He reached for his phone, dialing a colleague whose number he had memorized over months of late-night tutoring sessions. "Hey, it's Cole. I need help. Can you come over?" His voice was quiet, almost pleading. The line clicked. A pause, then a familiar voice. "Cole, everything okay?" Yeah, I can't deal with this alone." Minutes later, the doorbell rang, a sharp, insistent sound cutting through the suffocating stillness. He opened it to reveal his colleague, a thin man with glasses and a perpetually worried expression. "What's going on?" the colleague asked, stepping inside. Cole led him toward the living room, avoiding the obvious scene. She fell. I think she hit her head. I need help cleaning up." His colleague froze as he glimpsed the sheet. "Cole, oh God." "It's fine," Cole insisted, voice tighter than he realized. "I've got a plan, just help me move her onto the couch." They worked in silence, lifting the body carefully, as if the act of touching her would shatter him entirely. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the windows, masking the muffled sounds of movement inside. Once she was settled, Cole began staging the apartment. Overturned chairs returned, the coffee cup wiped clean, the small notebook tucked neatly on the table. He left fragments of papers as though she had simply been there, studying, distracted, nothing more. "Why? Why would this happen?" his colleague whispered. Cole shook his head, unwilling to meet the man's eyes. "I don't know, I just panicked." He paused, breathing heavily, staring at the window, the neon glow of the streetlight reflected in the wet pavement below, blinking in silent accusation. Minutes dragged. Then finally he dialed 911. Yes, I need my friend. She collapsed. His words were careful, controlled, each syllable chosen to remove guilt, to fabricate innocence. As the dispatcher asked questions, Cole's mind raced. How would he explain the scratches on his hands, the phone shattered on the floor, the push of adrenaline, anger, and fear that had led to this? Within 15 minutes, sirens cut through the rain. Red and blue lights flashed across the walls, illuminating the apartment in staccato bursts of truth. Neighbors peeked from their doorways, whispering, gesturing, some dialing numbers, others simply staring in disbelief. Detective Sarah Lopez was first through the door, her gaze sweeping the room like a predator seeking weakness. She crouched by the body, scanning, noting details, the subtle bruising, the angle of the fall, the warmth of the surrounding area. "Who called it in?" she asked, voice measured but low, carrying both authority and suspicion. Cole's answer was quiet, rehearsed. I don't know. Someone might have seen her fall. I called my friend to help." Lopez's eyes lingered on him, sharp. "And you thought staging the apartment would make it look accidental?" Cole's lips pressed together, and for a moment he could only nod. Forensic photographers arrived, cameras clicking, capturing every shadow, every fragment of evidence. Each photo was another piece of his unraveling story, another reminder that the lie would only hold for so long. Detective Mark Reeves leaned over the body, noting the bruising and the subtle redness around Mia's wrist and neck. "Was she alive when you called for help?" he asked. Cole shook his head, voice barely audible. I don't know. Maybe. I don't remember." Reeves didn't press. He didn't need to. The cracks were already showing. Outside, neighbors whispered, forming theories, connecting dots they didn't yet understand. Teachers from West Creek High would soon arrive, worried, cautious, as the rumors began to spin into something larger than a single apartment. Cole sat on the edge of the couch, head in his hands. The lie he had built around panic, fear, and desperation now felt brittle, dangerous, ready to collapse with a single misstep. He glanced at the shattered phone on the floor, remembering Mia's words, her steady gaze, the threats she had made, the videos, the control she had wielded over him. And for a brief, frozen moment, he wondered if the weight of guilt, fear, and inevitability would ever let him breathe again. The first stage of his story was complete. A fall, an accident, an attempt at illusion. But Detective Lopez and Reeves weren't fools, and as the rain outside began to fade, he realized the lie, the carefully constructed lie, was only the beginning. The investigation had begun. Detective Lopez sat across from Cole Daniels in the small, sterile interview room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. She watched him closely, every twitch, every subtle flicker of his eyes. He claimed to have been at home when Mia fell, yet nothing in his story lined up. "Let's go over your timeline again," she said calmly, flipping open her notebook. "When exactly did you call your friend to come over?" Cole rubbed his forehead, voice tight. "Around 7:30, I think." "I don't remember exactly." Lopez raised an eyebrow. "You don't remember? That's convenient." He swallowed hard, shaking his head. "I panicked. I don't think straight under pressure." Outside the room, Officer Reeves watched through the glass, noting the tension. He had seen panic before, but this felt different. Cold. Calculated fear mixed with denial. Inside, Lopez leaned forward. "Your story has holes. Witnesses say Mia left the school building later than your timeline suggests. And neighbors heard voices coming from your apartment around 8:30, not 7:30. Cole flinched but didn't respond immediately. His hands fidgeted with the wedding ring on his finger, twisting it absently. I was stressed," he finally said. "I might have—" "Misremembered," Lopez paused. "Stress doesn't explain everything. And your phone records show multiple calls to Mia that day, calls you didn't mention." Meanwhile, forensic teams combed through the apartment. Every surface was photographed, every fragment of evidence catalogued. The shattered phone, the displaced furniture, even fingerprints on the mug were noted. They were piecing together a story Cole had tried desperately to hide. Reeves crouched beside the coffee table, examining the edge where Mia's head had struck. This is inconsistent with a simple fall," he muttered, showing Lopez. Lopez nodded. "Exactly. The bruising patterns, the blood spatter. Something doesn't add up." He tried to make it look accidental, but it's not. Back in the interview room, Lopez slid a folder across the table. "We have her phone, videos, texts, everything you tried to cover up." Cole's face went pale, lips pressing together. "Please, those videos aren't—" "They're evidence," Lopez interrupted, voice cold. "And the texts show you were involved. You can't lie your way out anymore." A long silence followed. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled the room. Cole stared at the folder, mind racing. Every lie he had told, every manipulation, was laid bare on glossy paper. At West Creek High, rumors had become whispers of dread. Teachers avoided eye contact with colleagues. Students whispered, gossiping over hallway walls. The administration tried to maintain calm, but the truth was leaking faster than anyone could control. "Have they found out about the affair?" one teacher asked another quietly. "No one's confirming yet," the other replied, eyes darting toward the main office. "But you can feel it." Lopez continued her questioning. "Why didn't you call an ambulance immediately?" I panicked. I didn't know what to do." Cole's voice cracked, but defensiveness lingered underneath. "You staged the apartment," Lopez said, each word precise. "Moved her body, staged the scene. Do you realize that makes you look guilty?" Cole buried his face in his hands. I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean?" Lopez leaned closer. "This girl is dead, Cole, and your attempts to cover it up won't protect you." As detectives pulled together the evidence, messages, phone records, witness statements, Cole began to unravel. Each inconsistency, each lie weighed heavier. Outside the station, reporters and neighbors had begun to gather, cameras ready, rumors flying. The story had grown beyond the apartment, beyond the school, beyond his control. Inside, Lopez closed the folder and fixed him with a look he couldn't escape. "The videos, the texts, your inconsistencies, they all point to one thing. You're going to have to explain yourself in court, and it won't be pretty." Cole swallowed, words failing him. Panic, guilt, and the stark realization of what he had done collided in a single suffocating moment. He had thought he could control the situation, thought he could manipulate, lie, and survive. Now, the investigation was closing in, and every shadow of deception he had tried to hide was illuminated under the harsh fluorescent light of truth. The next step was inevitable. The trial would begin, and with it, the reckoning he had spent weeks trying to avoid. The courtroom was tense, almost unbearably so. Sunlight slanted through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished wood and marble floors. Journalists lined the back row, cameras poised while parents, friends, and neighbors watched in silence, some faces pale, others taut with anticipation. Cole Daniels sat at the defense table, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the floor. His hands gripped the edge of the table as though it could anchor him against the storm he had created. The hum of whispered conversations barely masked the heartbeat pounding in his ears. The prosecutor, a sharp, relentless woman named Eleanor Cruz, stood and addressed the jury. Her voice was measured but charged, cutting through the quiet like a scalpel. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence you will see paints a clear picture of premeditation, manipulation, and betrayal. A teacher entrusted with the care of a minor used that trust for his own benefit. And when confronted with the consequences, he chose violence over accountability. Cole flinched slightly as she gestured toward the large screen where images of the apartment flashed. Overturned chairs, the shattered phone, the blood-stained carpet. Each frame reinforced what he had tried so desperately to bury. Defense attorney Marcus Hall rose, pacing slowly. "Members of the jury," he began, voice low and deliberate. "My client is a human being, flawed and panicked. He did not intend this tragic outcome. A confrontation escalated beyond his control. We ask that you consider the context, the fear, and the pressure he faced when evaluating his actions." Across the room, Mia's mother stared at Cole, fists clenched, face pale but resolute. The sight of him, the man who had violated every trust, every boundary, made her stomach churn. Testimonies began, each more damning than the last. A classmate described Mia texting him about the videos, the tension she carried, the fear that pulsed through her even when she smiled at school. Another witness recounted seeing Cole repeatedly leave the school grounds during suspicious hours. Avoiding colleagues and staff, Detective Lopez testified, calm but unwavering, detailing the inconsistencies in Cole's statements, the evidence collected from the apartment, and the timeline discrepancies that placed him at the scene of the confrontation. "The fall was staged," she said simply, almost clinically. "This was no accident." Cole's lips pressed tightly together, jaws stiff. Every piece of evidence, every testimony, felt like another weight pressing into his chest. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but Marcus's hand rested lightly on his arm, a silent warning. "Wait." The defense tried to shift blame subtly, implying panic, fear, and loss of control. But the videos Mia had recorded, played in court, left little room for interpretation. Her voice, soft and firm, narrated moments that revealed a pattern of manipulation, a struggle for power in a relationship that should never have existed. Cole's eyes fixed on the floor again as the courtroom replayed the videos. The jury watched in silence, some leaning forward, faces grim. The judge's gavel pounded sharply as the final arguments were made. Cruz's voice rose, cutting to the heart of the matter. "Justice is not merely about what was intended. It is about the consequences of actions, the lives forever changed. One young woman is dead. One teacher's choices brought devastation. You must hold him accountable." Hall's rebuttal was quieter, pleading, but even his words couldn't erase what had been seen. When the jury was excused to deliberate, Cole sat alone, head in his hands. The gallery emptied slowly, whispers echoing off the walls. His mind replayed every confrontation, every lie, every misstep. The fear he had once channeled into manipulation now felt like chains tightening around him. Minutes turned into hours. Time dragged as if the universe itself was forcing him to confront the inevitable. Finally, the jury filed back into the courtroom. The foreperson stood, handing the verdict to the judge. Silence. Cole's chest felt tight. The walls seemed closer, the lights brighter. The gavel struck once, twice, a heartbeat that signaled the finality of months of investigation, testimony, and evidence. The judge cleared his throat, voice heavy with the weight of duty. "Have you reached a verdict?" "We have," the foreperson replied. The words that followed would change the course of his life forever. Cole Daniels looked up briefly, eyes meeting the empty gaze of Mia's mother, realizing finally that some actions can never be undone, and some secrets cannot remain hidden.